Bob Morales always drove Ritchie to the airport. Every single time. That was big brother duty. Drive him there, see him off, bring him home safe. He'd done it every tour, every trip, without fail. But one night in February 1959, the brothers had a fight. Something stupid, something small, a dress their grandmother wanted. And because they were still mad about it, Bob didn't go. Ritchie Valens got on the plane alone. He never came back. Bob carried that moment for the rest of his life. 60 years of telling anyone who would listen. Whoever you love, whoever you care about, be sure you tell them how you feel, because maybe you won't have another chance. That's the Bob Morales the movie never showed you. When La Bamba came out in 1987, everyone assumed one man would hate it. Not the studio, not the critics. Bob Morales, Ritchie's older brother. The drunk, the screw-up, the man the entire film seems to hold responsible for everything that went wrong. Years later, someone finally asked him, "What did it feel like watching that version of yourself on screen?" Bob thought about it. Then he said, "They made me look good." If that sounds backwards to you, stay right there. Because here's what the movie never told you. The most damaging thing La Bamba implies about Bob Morales, it wasn't even his story. Despite everything, the drinking, the anger, the chaos, Bob Morales became the most memorable character in La Bamba. Not Ritchie, Bob. People don't quote Ritchie's lines, they quote Bob's. His raw, complicated energy hit something real in audiences, something they recognize from their own families, their own lives. The troubled older brother, the one who loves you and fails you at the same time. The one who never quite got his shot. Esai Morales brought that character to life in a way that has never been forgotten. Fans have praised his performance for nearly 4 decades. The physicality, the vulnerability underneath the aggression, the moments where you almost understand Bob even when you want to hate him. The film made Bob the villain. The audience made him the most human person on screen. And that's exactly what makes what we're about to tell you so important, because the character that resonated with millions of people was built on a foundation that wasn't even true. The love triangle. The storyline that suggests Bob would betray his own brother over a woman. The scene that makes the audience turn on him completely. It was fiction. That entire storyline was taken directly from something that happened to the director, Luis Valdez, and one of his own brothers. It had nothing to do with Bob Morales. Valdez has basically admitted it. He said that everyone who knew Ritchie only had good things to say, so he needed someone to carry the darker, conflicted energy of the story. Bob had told him, "I was a bastard. You tell whatever story you want to tell." The movie took him at his word. Now let's talk about who he actually was. Roberto Bob Morales was born on March 9, 1937 in Los Angeles. He grew up poor in the San Fernando Valley, the oldest boy in a working-class Mexican-American family, which meant you grew up fast and carried more than your share. At San Fernando High School, a campus of over 2,000 students, Bob showed up every day in Levi's and cowboy boots, while everyone around him wore khakis and Pendletons. The fights were constant. His daughter later said he told her he kicked everybody's ass with those cowboy boots. But under the toughness, something had broken. In his mid-teens, Bob found out the man he'd always called his father was actually his stepfather. It shattered him. The fights turned into drinking under a bridge with older men, and eventually a violent run-in with a school official that landed him in Rancho San Antonio boys' home for nearly 3 years. He came home in the late 1950s, just in time to watch his little brother become famous. This part of the story La Bamba got right. As Ritchie's career exploded, records, tours, television, Bob was stuck in dead-end work while the kid he'd grown up protecting became a star. That mix of pride and jealousy, on top of years of heavy drinking, led to fights and ugly scenes around shows. Bob never denied any of it. After the crash in 1959, it got worse. He was 21 years old. He'd just lost his little brother, and he'd lost a chance to say goodbye. He drank more, he was physically abusive toward his longtime partner, the mother of 7 of his children. His family has been honest about this. His biographers have been honest about this. Bob was honest about it too. So La Bamba didn't invent a monster. But here's what the movie does with that material. It puts it on a loop. Scene after scene. Ritchie shines, Bob shows up drunk or angry, chaos, exit. At some point, that stops being the portrait of a real human being and starts feeling like a plot device. The designated screw-up. The guy whose only job is to make Ritchie's story feel more tragic by comparison. What the movie never showed you was what Bob carried after Ritchie died. It skipped the part that defined the rest of his life. Everything leads back to February 1959. Bob always drove Ritchie. Always. But that night, because of a stupid fight over a dress, he didn't. And Ritchie Valens got on Buddy Holly's chartered plane, and the plane went down in a frozen Iowa cornfield on February 3rd, 1959. His daughter Jenny said Bob repeated that story for the rest of his life. Not as a confession, as a warning. He would tell anyone who would listen, whoever you love, whoever you care about, be sure you tell them how you feel, because maybe you won't have another chance. That's not the one-note drunk the movie froze in place. That's a man who spent 60 years turning his worst regret into a lesson so that no one who heard it would ever have to carry what he carried. In the early 1970s, Bob checked himself into a rehab program in Santa Cruz. When he went back later to visit friends still in the program, the staff asked him something he didn't expect, whether he'd consider staying on as a substance abuse counselor. His first thought was, how can I pull this off? He took the job anyway. Bob spent years at Janus of Santa Cruz, running a methadone program, helping people fight the same demons that had nearly destroyed him. That's also where he met Joni. She'd first come through the center because her ex-husband needed treatment. Every conversation about his progress had to go through Bob. Over time, they talked every single day. On February 24th, 1979, they got married at that same rehab center where they'd met. He moved to Watsonville and slowly became a well-known face in the community. The leather-clad biker with the big hat who was somehow at every local concert, always in motion, always in his leathers. Movie fans called him La Bamba Bob. To the people of Watsonville and Santa Cruz, he was the man who helped addicts get clean and fed whoever walked through his door. His kids described waking up to strangers at their breakfast table, people their dad had brought home from a parking lot or a street corner because they needed a meal, a few dollars, or just someone to treat them like a human being. In 2012, Bob was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He fought it for 6 years. Radiation, remission, relapse, and back again. His daughter said he fought that shit to the bitter end, still cracking jokes near the end, still recognizing old friends who came to say goodbye. Isai Morales, the actor who played him, wrote after Bob's passing, "Farewell, my big brother. You gave me so much to work with and be grateful for." When Bob was briefly hospitalized near the end, his family asked if he wanted to stay. He said, "Take me home." So they did. He died at home on September 15, 2018, at 81 years old, surrounded by his family. Near the end, he told one of his daughters something that sounds like every lesson he ever learned, wrapped up in one line. Money don't mean shit. You know what matters? Love. Every family has a Bob. That's what people say about the movie. And they're right. But what they mean is, every family has someone who carries more than they should, breaks under the weight of it, and spends the rest of their life trying to make it right. That's who Bob Morales was. Not a villain, not a plot device. A man who turned his worst moments into a warning he gave to everyone he ever met, so they wouldn't have to carry what he carried. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below. And go watch La Bamba. Just watch it knowing the most human character in that film was also the most misunderstood one.